Call to order the Board of Zoning Appeals public hearing. Today is August 7th, 2024, and we have two applications on the agenda tonight. The first is project number 00584. It's for area variance number 0185, 651 Central Avenue. We've been informed, well, first is the applicant here tonight? Okay, hearing no. So we've been informed that the applicant is not here tonight pursuant to the board's rules of procedure 9.1. Failure of an applicant or representative of an applicant to attend the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting where the applicant's case is a current matter scheduled for a hearing will render the applicant subject to the tabling of such appeal or denial of such appeal. I personally am in favor of tabling the appeal, but this is, we are a majority board and the other board members want to discuss or make a motion to table or deny.
I would make a motion to deny. We've already heard from this applicant, and unless planning staff have they provided any of the information that we discussed at the last time we saw these folks?
They have not provided any additional information. It just provided the same sign. Erica did provide them with additional kind of options from around the city as examples, kind of demonstrating other options or alternatives that they would consider.
Do you remember the last time, or do you have a note for the last time you had contact with them?
I believe it was this week that Erica communicated and did not receive hers.
And prior to that, did you communicate and receive responses from them?
Yes, because they had confirmed noticing requirements to attend the meeting. So that's required.
I did have an update after not having heard for the whole week, and Erica asking, they did respond today saying they would be attending.
Okay.
But
it's 6:03. Meeting started at 6 o'clock.
And I guess I will say my reasoning for tabling is just in general, I guess I'm in favor of exercising grace where the rules and the law allow for it. And in this case, applicants are barred from submitting the same or substantially same application for a time period of 3 years. And that's my reasoning for tabling. That said, if there's a motion that we are voting on, or if they're actually, so did you move to deny?
I will if it's worth the exercise. I certainly don't think there's a point to making a motion to deny if the other members of the board would like to hold, but I'll make a motion to deny I move to deny AB 0185.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Paige, how do you vote?
No, I think I need a second first.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
No second, then the motion fails. Sorry. I don't know that I can declare my own motion failing this.
Has failed for tonight. Do we have any other motions on the table? Or motions on the floor?
I move that we table application AB 0185.
I'll second.
Okay, Paige, how do you vote?
Yes.
Lisa, how do you vote?
No.
Serena, how do you vote?
Yes.
Martha, yes. The motion to table carries. Okay, the next application we have is for project number 00593, area variance number 0187, 98 to 106 North Pearl Street. Applicant AJ Signs, representing Agent First Church in Albany. And is the applicant here?
Yes.
Please approach.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Carly Clark. I'm from AJ Signs, representing Ray and First Church of Albany. And today we wanted to present a digital sign where they're strictly not prohibited. We wanted to make the variance minimal, so we met the height requirement and also the square footage allowance. So we do comply there. But we would like to put a digital sign kind of for a unique reason. The church is pretty set back and they do own the parking lot, which is where we'd like to put the sign. They do have an existing structure there, which they recently replaced. There are 2 new steel posts. You can see a picture on the left of what exists. The posts are new, and it's actually great for us because they actually will structurally support the sign after a site survey that we're proposing. So they put kind of like a temporary sign there showing the parking and also a small sign for the church, which is located right behind the parking lot. the need for digital in the specific location, I think, is very important because it's a heavily trafficked area. And people don't know if they can park there or not. Also, people have been parking there overnight. People have been parking there and not paying to park there. So they've been having some issues there with parking in general. And also people have a hard time finding the church because it is set back. So we thought with a header cabinet that would be stagnant on the top, internally illuminated with LEDs, and then having a digital display underneath, we'd be able to basically portray the rates and if the parking lot is open to the public for parking. Ray, who's a member of the church and also manages some of the parking here, has basically hired a company who manages the parking lot, and he's allowed members of the public to park for work or if they come down to grab coffee down the street there. And I think that a lot of people have taken advantage of that and they don't pay, and then they have issues where they have to tow people, and we really want to minimize that. So by having a digital screen to basically put, you're allowed to park here during these hours, this is the rate, I think it would minimize a lot of confusion. Another reason for the digital sign here, I think it's important. I have a couple friends that live in Albany, and sometimes when there's a snow emergency down here, they have a hard time going to the website to figure out when the plows are coming by and when they're not. This could also be used as a community tool for emergency alerts. It also is a Daktronics digital sign. They really have invested in technology here because it automatically auto dims with the weather, so they don't have to adjust it. So it's never too bright, it's never too dull, it's easy to read. Like I said, it ties into the local Amber Alerts, which is very important. And then Ray and the church are willing to use this for community events. So if there's something happening downtown Albany, they do a lot of really good work. They have a food pantry during the week. They hold AA meetings. So that would also be something they'd like to put on the sign to kind of let the community know, what's going on, what the church has to offer. They also are doing free hot dog Thursdays in a local park. So that might be something kind of nice to throw on the sign so the community knows they're on the internet or on Facebook. Originally when Ray had come to AJ Signs, he presented me with doing 2 digital signs, like one on top of the other, like one for the church and then one for the parking lot. And after talking to Daktronics, one of the digital sign manufacturers that we use, which they're awesome, they're all over the area, we now have the technology to split the screen by having one screen. So we want to minimize variance by staying within the square footage. And we came up with this design so we can basically block off whatever portion of the screen we want. So if we want to hold the parking Monday through Friday with certain hours and certain rates, we can leave that on the bottom screen and then just have the middle screen show a few slides. We will also comply with DOT requirements, which is a 7-second hold, so the screen will never flash, it'll never move, anything like that. And that's kind of what we're presenting today. Does anyone have any questions?
Do you want to go through the factors first of the 5 area variance factors, character of the neighborhood, alternatives considered, substantiality, impact on the environment, self-created difficulty?
Sure. So the digital, do you want me to read what we wrote? I'm sorry.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, sorry. So character of the neighborhood, we don't believe the digital sign will be a detriment to nearby properties. We did do a little research, and the Palace Theater is considered in the same district, and they do have a digital sign. We actually did that sign, we replaced it recently. That's about 325 square feet of digital signage. I know we replaced existing, but it is the same district. The sign is to be located at the entrance of the parking lot for the church. It also uses kind of a directional to get into the parking lot for the church. The sign is to be used to communicate church events and messaging to the parish and the public. The sign will also be utilized to replace signage in the area that alerts motorists to the times and days that the parking lot will be a paid parking lot and when it is free for church attendees and activities. And the sign will be equipped with an auto dim function to be night sky compliant and be obtrusive in the evening. Alternatives considered, digital signage is a valuable tool by which churches are able to modernize the way they communicate with the parishioners in the community. We've seen a really big increase in digital signage in churches, especially after COVID, being able to get the messages out and changing different times and different meetings that they have. Capturing the attention of parishioners new and old is one of the only ways churches can grow memberships to remain viable in the community. This digital sign will also be able to communicate to motorists wishing to park in the parking lot on certain days, what the fee is and where those fees should be paid. The church would like to cut down on the amount of unauthorized parking in their lot as well. See. We do not believe the variance should be seen as substantial. We are replacing an existing sign. We are reusing those posts already there. With a sign comparable to the digital component that will be used for communication purposes. Impacts on the environment. There will be no adverse effects on the environment or the physical conditions in the area. Digital display will be equipped with an auto dim feature for nighttime use. That also works during the day too. If it's really bright and sunny out, it automatically dims, so you're still able to read it. Self-created difficulty. The need for a digital sign could be seen as self-created, however, this should not diminish the importance for the church to be able to send messaging to the public in real time, whether it be for the church and community event messaging or the parking lot messaging that needs to be changed depending on the day.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And let's start. Oh, okay.
They don't seem to be here. They did sign up to speak.
Okay, request for public comment. So we have Autumn Thurman's in the record, but maybe we'll start with board questions first.
Could you explain a little bit more about, you said there's some type of informal agreement between, I don't know if you said Ray and people in the neighborhood or employees who sometimes use the lot and overstay and may take advantage of that informal agreement? Could you explain a little bit more about that?
Sure.
Yeah, basically, the church owns the parking lot, pays school taxes, property taxes on it. They lease the lot out to a separate parking lot company. Part of that agreement was that any company that comes in has to offer, how do I want to say it, monthly parking as well as day use parking. Monthly parking for, as a good neighbor for people that work downtown, rather be in an office building or whatever. They have a limited number of those, but nonetheless, they do that. And then the agreement is negotiated, the parking lot, the company pays sales taxes to Albany County based on the revenue received. And then the church negotiates with that company, whichever one it might be, how much the church expects to be paid. And that's pretty much how it operates, but it's an independent corporation.
And did you say that people are taking advantage of?
Yes, what happens if the vast majority of people are honest. We went with a recommended system similar to what the city uses of kiosks rather than an expensive attendant there for 8 or 10 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that model works very well. What invariably happens is there are those people that feel that either they can't pay, I can't go there, but then the lot is monitored. Those that have not paid, then we call a towing company to come down and tow them away because, and that's created some hard feelings, shall I say. But if you don't pay, so anyway, that's pretty much it. And what happens with a static sign, this is what we found. The static sign was upgraded, and if you brought that slide back up, it says no overnight parking. I don't advocate drinking and driving, but invariably, the only night that the church requires use of the lot is Sundays. They have drive-in worship, and they park facing the outdoor pulpit, which is across the parking lines. And on any given Sunday, you have none to as many as 3 or 4 cars left in the lot. Understandably, I don't believe, but those cars, we have to be there early and they get towed, and those people get upset. They get upset with the church, even though it's not the church doing the towing, it's the parking lot. Per the agreement of the lease. So the type of thing happens. And I really think that if indeed even though it's illuminated on the top reading down and it's clearly in red and white, no overnight, and that it's paid parking. I think this would help the company, which in turn would help the church because that might generate more money for the church. But I think that pretty much is where I'm at. Now, I'm the treasurer for the church as well as a trustee, and we do the negotiating of the lease. And it's been favorable. I mean, they've been a good company, but they have come to us with the problem, and so we figured if a sign would be beneficial to both entities, the church, and then like now the blood drive is going on. There's nice signs, but the public that's going by can't see those signs. They're just small square signs that could be on there. It's a voting place that can go on there. We gladly welcome the city for voting that. So, but that pretty much is it.
And is there any relationship between the church and McGarry's? This is right by McGarry's, right?
No, McGarry's is on the Orange Street side. This is on Sheridan. No, McGarry's, there's no, there's another lot that the church owns that pays tax on. It's a small one, but staff park there. And obviously we don't tow from that lot. And I believe there are people from McGarry's that park there, but no, we have no agreement with McGarry's for parking. But then again, we don't tow and enforce anything. There is the
That's a
church.
separate lot.
Separate lot, yeah. And a much smaller one. This has, by new standards, this lot has 66 spots. The one which borders the building McGarry's and our church and has 15 slots, I believe. And like I say, that's used by people that come to our food pantry. They park there. Obviously, some people from McGarry's.
So I have a question.
Yes,
Thank
sure.
you, Mr. Gray. One of the factors that Carly talked about, and that's part of our consideration is alternatives considered. So I have a couple questions on that.
Okay.
You mentioned the cost of this versus hiring a lot attendant to supervise the lot. And I've parked in this lot before, I paid it off. And it's essentially
You haven't been told, so I guess we're okay. We're on speaking terms.
But it's essentially an honor system, right?
Correct.
There's no lot attendant, there's no bar, no barrier
Right.
impeding the ability to get in and out of this lot.
That's correct.
Has there been any consideration for, and if you could tell me what those considerations have been for alternatives like a lot attendant or a non-manned bar thing?
The problem,
Unmanned.
two things.
Yes.
To have a person there taking car keys increases the liability insurance. And the previous company that rented that was Maiden Lane. And if you've ever seen Maiden Lane at any point in time, they had 5 and 6 cars parked in a row. When Maiden Lane left after COVID and the church went looking for vendors, everyone said that the lot, the way it's configured, it is not usable. So the church hired an architect's firm, and so Maiden Lane was able to park 90 cars. The new lot configuration, wider, deeper, resulted in 66 plus 3 handicap. Maiden Lane had no handicap parking. Required based on the number of slots, X amount of handicap availability. And then researching rather to put bars up because there's 2 entrances up top and the bottom one is the main. The recommendation of the Albany Parking Authority, another private company, and the company that they ultimately went with for kiosks was that's really the way to go. The bar presents other problems of how do you want to say getting it's the bar really prevents day use. You'd have to move the kiosk to pay outside onto city property, and we really couldn't do that. So based on everything, the recommendation was 2 kiosks, one there, and it works. You know, in talking with them, it works fine. It's just there's only a few that. But what happens is someone has to walk the lot with plate numbers, look on the dashboard, see if it has a current date stamp, and then they give one warning, take the plate number. If they do it a second time, then they get towed. So they try to keep it as user friendly as possible without anything. But that pretty much is it. But the hire a person creates 2 things: the liability insurance increase and
Personnel.
the personnel costs to have. And the other thing they recommended against to keep liability insurance down, doesn't handle cash, debit and credit cards only, no cash used, which is really the way to go. Yep.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that?
No, by all means, please.
What about for like overnight parking, a gate or a locked gate closed?
Well, there is overnight parking. There are people that live and attorneys on the Sheridan Avenue side. The company instituted a 2-tier monthly pass system. One for day use, Monday through Friday, one for overnight, Saturday and Sunday, basically a 7-day pass. They get a different color pass, goes on their dash. They live across the street, park there. The attorneys say they work, and they do work different hours. But that's only 5 passes out of all of them that do that. The rest are day use.
And then I have one last question.
Sure.
For Carly. Thank you. What's the power source to run the sign? Like, how are you pulling power?
So there is power that's existing already at the sign location, and there's a large light there, so we actually don't even have to run any new power. Which is awesome. And it's pretty sweet that we can use the existing posts. That never happens. They're nice, they're new, they're stainless steel, they can support the digital sign that we have, so we're pretty much good to go. Wise.
Thank you.
Yep, and the top does have LEDs, so it's very effective
Okay.
and efficient.
I don't have any questions.
Did this lot used to have an attendant?
Yeah, Maiden Lane had an attendant because of how they parked the cars. And they would park them 5 and 6 deep and take the keys. Albany Parking Authority and another internet or nationwide company said we don't take keys. It's just too much of a liability.
And so like alternates considered, that is great that you had worked with other city agencies such as the parking authority.
Well, we solicited who would want to operate this.
Okay.
If you the Albany Parking Authority would require us to the church to spend about $70,000 to bring the parking lot parking to standards, which is size, width of parking spots, and they wanted green areas and that. The international one, not the nationwide one, wanted closer to 80,000, and they were going to leave it open just the way it is. And then when we talked to ATI, which does kiosks for the city as well, and that's where we got their name, they recommended going with the kiosk. Definitely have to reconfigure it. So that's how the church ultimately decided to go.
So how much would that have cost for like how, so I guess just the price difference of what you had to spend to comply with what ATI wanted?
Oh, the cost was with architects and restriping. 2021, we were probably about The architects were about 4,000. And then they had to strike the parking lot twice, black out the existing lines and put in new ones. That was about $8,000. So it's roughly, we'll say $12,000 to $13,000 versus all the other money. So that's why it was decided to go this way.
But you didn't consult with the parking authority in terms of how to alleviate the problems that you were facing regarding cars being towed?
Well, we had limited experience in that. They would have managed a lot. And plus they would have only, I don't want to hear him talking to the city. They were only willing to pay the church $4,000 a month
Okay,
of revenue for the use of that parking lot. And we would have had to front a substantial amount of money to make it compliant to their standards. So that didn't look to be financially viable for the church, which depends on that lot, not for all of its revenue, but a good sense of that the lot generates.
it's kind of switching gears.
Sure.
Just kind of to conceptualize this, I know we talked about, our fellow board members talked about the different purposes for the sign.
Right.
And so it sounds like the sign would display that it's a paid parking lot and what those prices are.
But not the total sign. To pick back up on what Carly said, the bottom 1 foot of the sign, the church would be willing to let the parking lot company use to display no overnight parking rates. Yeah. Not a lot of them, but maybe 4 or 5 slides they call.
Yep.
And then the rest is strictly the church, what goes on in the church. It can be, as Carly said, or public service, but that was the intent of it. The primary intent is for the church. Secondary intent is to let anyone that leases the parking lot use the bottom 1 foot for parking information.
So that gray area, that's the bottom 1 foot?
No,
Or that's
the
below
bottom
this?
line,
Oh.
right about there
Okay.
might be the bottom 1 foot roughly.
So they're based, the way the digital sign is, they have like 12-inch by 12-inch modules basically. And right now, like you're basically looking at a giant blank screen, right? So you can utilize that whole thing for church messaging, the whole thing for parking if you wanted. The sign does have the capabilities to break it up, whether it's 12 inches tall, 24 inches tall, 36, to kind of make it look like it's a separate screen. And then you can hold it or they can rotate message. So if they wanted to put, like Ray was saying, like 12-inch tall band, kind of like where it says no overnight parking on the existing sign, and have it stay like that all day, it can do that. It can also change, it can flop, it can say like no overnight parking, and then 7 seconds later it can say Monday through Friday, $10 per day. So it has the capabilities to either stay stagnant, you can kind of divide the areas of the sign for different things. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
I guess, so what would be the first church in Albany, that would always be there, but I guess for the illuminated part, like what would you have to pick one primary purpose
Oh,
of that?
the primary purpose would be notifying people of what goes on at First Church, when our services are, the food pantry. We do soup in the park in the winter, hot dogs in the park in the nicer weather. We have Wednesday centered prayer. The primary function is to note what goes on at First Church. And like I say, because the church owns the lot and likes to lease it out, they would agree to the bottom 1 foot of the sign being dedicated to the parking lot. But the balance would be just about First Church. Like now, the blood drive is going on. That could be a slide. Voting site when it's time. It gives the church more flexibility to let people know what's going on at First Church. And that pretty much is where we are.
Can I tell you one,
Sure, by all means.
the front side of the church on the
North Pearl Street, yeah.
is there a little, like, you know, how some churches have like the board that like
Right,
that says like fundraisers or
right. That was considered by us, but the size of that is, I think, this size. And while we probably could have put a 2x3 sign there, it just would not be as effective, we felt, as that, which has traffic going up Chapel, Sheridan, North Pearl, and also the people that use the lot. And like I say, also during the warmer weather, we do outdoor church service, which is open to everyone. So that could be on there, so people would be aware that, you know, from May to September, we do outdoor service. Drive-in service, sit in your car and pray.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other digital signs in the area?
The Palace Theater is in the same district, and that's not in the same district, but it is very close to MVP Arena. We did some of that changeover. When it went from the TU to MVP Arena. The only sign that I personally changed was on top of the MVP Arena, there's a sign, a digital sign. It's not the huge, like wall mounted ones. I don't know the exact size of those, but the one on the very top of the arena is 720 square feet. It's 18 feet tall by 40 feet wide. That's not including the very large digital signs you have, like that face the road there. I can't speak to that because I just don't know those sizes.
There is a digital sign on Columbia between Broadway and Waters. Do you know Chisley the zoning of like 625 Broadway? Because I know there's a parking garage there that has a digital sign. 625 Broadway, yeah. So it's in the DC building. Yeah, behind the old train station. Yeah, great. Yeah, so 22. Down to so same. Yeah, same zone. That's right. Yeah, there's one there on Columbia where the parts are spots.
And is the Palace Theater in the same district?
I believe so. Just double check for it.
Or permitting specialist, then yes, you check, definitely check. Do that today.
Both the MVP and capitalized or Palace, or I think, well, MVP is county, so we don't have jurisdiction. And Palace Theater, I think. There's a little bit of a blurred line as well as far as jurisdiction, I say a bit of pre-existing sign. That a little bit of this. Saying capitalized is always large.
The same zoning district, like not like Anna said.
Do you know if there was is there a variance granted by chance for that one that's on Columbia?
You don't think it's older than 2017?
I bet it is.
Then I think it's before the code.
Yeah, as I say, I didn't like her. 2017, been there the whole time I've been here.
Or just, yeah, if it's possible that it was in place before the code was adopted. So I couldn't speak to whether it was existing prior.
Before 2017?
Yeah, the current code was adopted.
What was the address again?
I just know it's on Columbia between Water and Broadway.
Few years.
Which is Julie's like when she comes back. She said she uses that. I think she said that.
I just work at 6:23, so I see it every day I walk out. So it's like I know it's there. But if we know that like digital signage is not permitted at all in the zoning district, have you considered other sizes to make the sign less substantial?
I thought we did our best to, like I said, like comply with the square footage that's allowed and also the height requirement while still using the existing posts that are there. That they spent a lot of money on, and there is electric there, so I feel like we did our best. Ray and I went back and forth for quite some time, rather than doing two digital signs stacked on top of each other to make it one. And also make it large enough to be effective, but still within the square footage that is allowed. So we did our best to kind of minimize the variance and, like I said, comply with the height and also comply with the square footage. The square footage also that was provided is the overall square footage of the sign, not just the digital. It includes the header from the very point to the bottom of the digital.
But is it the case that digital signage is not allowed, or because I'm looking at where it says sign may not contain flashing, intermittent rotating or moving lights? Is that the same as like a digital? Is that saying the same thing?
Yeah, no, LED.
Well, that's correct.
Yeah, no, LED or digital sign.
Okay. I think both that.
Yeah, I think that's, I wanna follow up on it, I think so. So if there was, hypothetically, instead of like a rotation, if it was just a digital sign that just showed First Church in Albany, basically that showed all this, and it didn't move, it did not rotate, it never flashed. Would that fall within that current definition of rotating, flashing, intermittent? So on and so on. And I'm paraphrasing, apologies.
Well, I think that speaks to, right, how quickly it can change. Like I mentioned, I think it's 4 changes, 4 screens or something per minute. So I don't know, the definition includes moving. I also don't know that you would be interested in having a LED screen if it didn't move.
Yeah, well,
I think.
that was the other, we had thought about the ones that you see other places that ticker tape across, and that doesn't, then we visited other churches to see what they had. And that's why we ultimately agreed that we would seek the ability to create an LED sign for the church.
And DOT requires you to 7-second hold, like across, whatever county or jurisdiction you're in, so the screen literally has to hold for 7 seconds, so it's not a distraction to motorists. So the sign's programmed for that. We can also program the sign, if Albany wants us to, or the client to say, you can have four changes a day, that's it. You can also do that, so it will hold for 20 minutes. It can hold all day if you wanted to. The screen is extremely smart. Like I said, it ties into Amber Alerts and weather emergencies. It's quite, it's a really good piece of technology. It's one of the best digital screens you can invest your money in, which at AJ Signs, we only basically sell Dactronics and Watchfire because most of the towns like them, City of Schenectady, they have a Watchfire. A lot of other cities and schools go with Dactronics because sometimes you'll see digital signs that are super bright, they malfunction, they're scrolling. Like a lot of towns also, their code says a digital sign, it prohibits flashing, moving, or rotating. This sign will never do any of that. So hopefully we can get this approved because the sign will never flash. Like, it's never gonna rotate, we're gonna never have a scroll on there. We're never gonna do any of that. The messaging will just change. And like I said, every 7 seconds is the state rule for DOT, but you can change it 4 times a day if you want, so the hold could be much longer.
Can you comment on, so I just want to make sure I understand, so in sort of the like bifurcation of the sign, you said that bottom like portion is the one's dedicated to parking, correct?
Yes.
So how do you anticipate not still having the same issues when the overall square footage you're dedicating on your sign to parking information has been significantly reduced?
I think that's something that Ray and I can kind of discuss, because we don't have to set in stone that it's only 12 inches of the sign.
Well, basically what we felt was if you look at that standard sign, and we were thinking 4 changes to any company that comes in, 4, maybe 5 slides to capture all that other information. And I think that's the important part. And then the real important part, though, is if you look at that, that's a static sign that says First Church. And right now, we have to type up stuff and go out and paste on that to get it to change. So, the church consistory that ultimately approved this, said, let's modernize First Church so people will, which is more important, First Church or parking? And don't get me wrong, the church realizes revenue is important. But in the scheme of things, First Church is the more important operating entity from their perspective. So that's why we said, if we can do that, and we feel they can, with just 1 foot by, we'll say 5 feet, and then the church has the rest to do and make it known. And we feel that that's a workable solution. And that's, I defer to the industry, but that's how we feel about it.
Are the church, is the building and the parking lot one lot, or are these two separate parcels?
The church sits on a tax exempt parcel. If you brought the sign, you had the schematic of the parking lot up.
Looks like the church is only 110 parcels.
They're two separate parcels.
There's 2 parcels.
I'm asking because I'm sort of looking at it, if the one parcel's obvious use is like, this is church, and then there's a second parcel, and the principal use of that is parking, that's why I'm.
Well, it's a little more complicated than that.
Right, because there are outdoor services that happen.
Right,
Right, but no, in terms of the main parking lot, which is sort of in that red, the church, you can see the 2 white towers there. That's the church proper. Just past the church, going north, if you looked on that, there's a very small lot right about there. And that's the lot used predominantly by staff. What the church also wanted with anybody that leases is there's 4 dedicated spots for the 2 ministers and 2 permanent staff that operate. The rest are used by and that's right by the church, 4 spots. So all other staff and I use the backside plus food pantry. The 2 ministers and the 2 permanent staff use 4 spots in the main lot. And the sign itself is going on the main lot, the main entrance. And that tree area is called Clee Park. That's used by the Montessori school for its kids. And that's where they do soup in the wintertime and hot dogs in the warmer weather as a public service.
Would you still be interested in the digital sign if it had to remain static? Because I'm looking at the part where it says the USDO does not allow intermittent rotating. So even the message would be moving, that could arguably be rotating.
My understanding, and I read that, is that this is a slide, just like a slideshow that you would put up. And that'll sit there for a little while, that disappears, and then another slide comes up. That's my understanding of how an LED sign works. And obviously the church would be willing to work, one slide all day it would be wonderful, but would not allow you to address other things that are going on in church. That's the issue with just one slide.
Would you still be interested if that was the only option? Would you still be interested in the digital sign if it had to be static?
I'd have to give that some thought and take it back to the consistory. I'm empowered to answer questions, but not to make that decision.
So when it says rotating, like there is an option which most digital signs, we don't allow them to do this, and you can set the capabilities. Like sometimes it's almost like back in the day when you do a PowerPoint, like kind of like fizzles out into a new one. That's like usually what a code means most of the time when it says rotating, or it literally like flips. You know what I mean? So with most of the digital message centers we put in, it just literally changes. There's no like dissipating or movement changing them, and also we don't allow the scrolling, which most cities don't either. But it's kind of crazy, I know MVP Arena is county, but I mean, they literally have like videos broadcasts on there, that's like moving, that's rotating. Which is something that, you know, this sign has the capability to literally play a video, but we're not asking for that, we're asking for a few messages a day just to be changed, not rotating. Nothing crazy, nothing scrolling, so. I think it's a fair ask, from my standpoint, I also think that this sign looks a lot better than, I'm so sorry, than what you have now. I think it would be a little
offense
bit of
taken.
improvement, sorry. I think it fits better, it fits within the post, it doesn't kind of overhang, we're not changing things with little stickers and stuff like that, so I really think it's gonna brighten up the area, and I do think that, it's gonna be more effective than what they have now.
Is the measurement between the bottom of the proposed sign to the ground the same as what is currently there?
No, there's a little bit more clearance with what we're proposing. I can try to find the exact measurement.
Yeah, I'm sort of looking with the sort of peaked part of the sign, just the overall height and like what is now, how high would the new sign be relative to what's existing now?
The sign that's there is 4x8, the top one is 4x8. The other one is roughly 5x4, roughly.
So from what do you know the overall measurement from the ground to the top of the paid parking sign?
Can I grab my phone too now? I have the measurements here, I just have to add them on. Oh.
I also actually, I have like a home, not a homework question, but a question that might take a minute, wondering council. If the city passed an ordinance like last year, or about a year and a half ago, and it was parking lot standards for private lots. And I know it's cross-referenced in the USDO, but there's also a chapter. And I'm wondering if you can pull that up, because I am curious, and I think these standards apply to parking lots who do substantial redevelopment or are new after the ordinance is enacted. But I'm just sort of, to the extent that this is permissible, kind of drawing the through line of like, I get that the other entities wanted you to invest substantially $70,000, $80,000 into this lot, but we would, in a sense, I think that ordinance was enacted to improve safety standards. So it's, you know, the sign would be attracting people to a lot that may not be. Does it have this kind of safety standards that we're now, that the city?
Yes, the architects drew it to current standards, parking lot standards, making the width of the lot more, the width of the line between the lots, the depth of the parking. And they drew it to, well, whatever 2021 standards were is when they did it. And it was a local Albany firm that did it, and based on their drawing, the lot was lined to standards. That's the best I can say.
Martha, do you happen to know roughly sections on this actually separate from the USDO?
It's cross-referenced in the USDO, but it's a different,
Something to do with kind of landscaping, screening, buffering, to kind of come up to standards.
yes, but yeah, having like bollards, having like pervious, like for pervious lots, like
Yeah.
smooth, like stay pervious. The difference, I think it was enacted
Yeah, it was
in like,
last spring, summer.
was introduced in 22, summer 22. Just sort of absence on it.
Searches for parking lot related things, and there's naturally quite a lot to it. Most of it's like Steve, that's what you're.
Wow, yeah, this is it, okay.
You should get all that application.
Did you want to take a look at the ordinance itself?
Or it's because like it's now law, right? Like, I'm just kind of curious what. What those requirements were, but. So proposed public parking lot, so I guess, yeah, it's compliance with the ADA and New York State Building Code. See, the law of the regulatory authority, or state regulations. Okay, so all parking lots have to conform to the requirements by December 31, 2023. Oh, I guess is this lot in compliance?
We are ADA compliance with the rumble strips, to the one parking lot. We're informed that with the other two handicap parking spots, because they would come out the main ramp, which leads to the sidewalks is flat, level, and in compliance. And the other one closer to the building was set with the sidewalk was regraded and done to be compliant, so I believe we are compliant.
We also went from no handicap spaces to 3,
Yeah.
correct?
We had to, and we had to regrade and make the ramp with rumble strips come up so they could get into the church. And so that's been done, so. And the handicap access, we had to put electronic doors in, which has been done, button open. That was all in conjunction with that. So I believe we are. I don't. I guess I could get the architects to come back, but they're the ones that drew it up.
When the ordinance had passed, at the planning department, we had sent out correspondence to all parking lot owners, letting them know this is the ordinance. If they were to submit plans to update their parking lots, those would come to the chief planning official for overview. But the regulatory, this building's in regulatory compliance with the one where they would get their building permits and they would do the inspections or they would go out. So, yes.
And this was all done in 2021, so.
Exam, we know this lot is in compliance. Or we have not heard otherwise of them.
I believe I haven't heard otherwise.
The current sign, like the first church sign, the bottom of that to grade, is 6 feet. And what we're proposing is 7, so it's a foot higher than what exists, and the total height of both signs together, is 88 inches tall, which is roughly 7.3 feet tall.
So the peak of the proposed new one would be at the same height as the top of the existing, or it would be taller?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, I'm sort of looking for in this proposed new sign, so I see the 2 poles that it's mounted on, right? And where the sign is, the poles are like capped at almost the peak of the new sign, so I'm sort of looking at like.
Right.
I understand.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm like visually, I'm sort of trying to figure out, is this now up here or is it still down here?
Probably right in between, like it's probably not right at the top of our rendering. Sorry, can I come up here? Yeah. Sure.
It's a lot easier to say.
I know, right? Well, based on my measurements here, the peak should come about right to here. So our rendering kind of looks a little funky, I guess, but the peak should be roughly here. And then we're gonna be a foot up. Does that make sense?
And those are 2 different size poles, and that was put in so with security lighting. The other thing that the church put in is 24-hour surveillance cameras for the whole parking lot at one side of the church. And that's 7 days.
Did that help with illegally parked cars at all, the surveillance?
The answer to that question is yes and no. It helps in that we can see, but you have to be at the church to access this fund. Right? We didn't think of remote, we're working on that to see if we could mitigate it. The other thing legally, it doesn't matter, is the church is going to require anyone who leases it to enter into some towing agreement, I believe, for protection of the church, protection of whoever leases the parking lot, and protection of whatever company may get authorization to tow. Because I guess we haven't encountered any lawsuits, but the company says they've been sued several times and saying it was unauthorized towing. But that's an internal thing that we're going to explore with the company that leases. The church doesn't want to enter into the agreement, even though it's the church's fine, because the church is an operator. We're asking the company that leases it to enter into those arrangements.
Have any of those lawsuits come to, what's the outcome?
Oh, I don't, I'd have to read that in the papers. I didn't ask them what was the net result, but what little I read in the Times Union going back about a year or so, it cast a shadow on those companies that tow. That's all I'll say. But we've been very pleased with Osborne. We haven't had any problems, but they won't tow unless a representative from the company is there to say, oh, this.
Representative ATI.
No, ATI is just the company that does the kiosks. The parking lot company that leases the lot has to have someone there to authorize their towing.
Who is that?
Right now?
So it's the church has to have a representative.
No,
Sorry. I'm sorry.
no, the company hired me part-time to work for them.
Both church and company. Representative.
The company ATI.
No, the company is FCI Parking Inc., which is incorporated in the state. As a private C corporation.
Okay.
ATI is the company that you buy the kiosks and rent the software that takes credit cards, reports receipts and all that stuff. So ATI is a different company, and then they maintain the kiosks.
So there's some kind of disconnect between if there's lawsuits for unauthorized.
Oh, and not with us. I just read it in the papers.
Yeah, good. Yeah, do does anyone have any other, do board members have any other questions for ask at this time before we move to public comment?
I think most of the staff notes have been addressed or say have been included in the staff memo. I think obviously the power source was addressed, which is helpful. I think just to point out that the reserved parking spots seem to be kind of more clearly labeled and identified as it stands currently, rather than with the proposed alternative. And if you go to the next slide, that's covered. Just pointing out the applicant did not clearly articulate the issues with the current sign and what is trying to be resolved by replacing current signs. Provide examples of messages that will be displayed. I obviously talked that more in depth here, but I think examples of what that would look like could be helpful. And then just reiterating that the digital sign cannot change more than 4 times each minute, and that each change of image cannot take place in less than 1 second.
But that's if it was allowable in this.
If there was a digital sign.
If these, in places where the digital sign is allowed, this is the rule.
If you were to grant a variance, that would still apply.
Okay.
And freestanding signs are allowed here, correct?
And a freestanding sign as it is perfectly allowed.
With the
Fine.
increase in the overall height of the sign, is it still In compliance with the ordinance.
Yes,
I did not overdo.
we're not over 20 feet tall, so we meet the height and square footage allowed. Did you hear that, yeah? Did you hear what she said? I wasn't sure. You said you're not over 20 feet. Correct. We're at 14.5 feet total, from grade to the very tip of the peak. Okay, I'm sorry. I thought you were on the.
I know, I suffer so exactly, very like overwhelmed, so I think.
Mr. Ryan, I think you've been asked this question a couple times and I don't know that. Heard a clear answer, so I'm gonna ask it one more time. If there was just a illuminated digital sign that never moved, never changed, never flickered, that said all the things the current sign says, but on screen. Would that work for the purposes that you're seeking with this variance?
And I answered that I am not free to speak to that because I'd have to go back to the church body, because the intent of it is not, the church's intent is not for that sign to be solely for the parking lot. The intent was for the church to display on whatever appropriate slides what goes on with the church.
And up-to-date information about other
Yeah.
events. Okay.
And then they also said we would, rather than two signs, the church would consider 1 foot across for slides solely dedicated to the parking lot. But the main thrust of the sign is for the church.
Okay. That makes sense, and thank you, I apologize.
Don't, please, no apology necessary.
And for the rest of the board, just explain sort of what I'm thinking. I've been, as we've been talking, taking a look at the rest of 375-409, and the way that I read the cited section there, 409-5A2A3A, is that there is a difference between and because it makes specific reference to electronically or manual changing signs, which to me suggests that there's a difference between a static sign, as I think Serena was asking about, and a sign that rotates between various messages, and that there is an interpretation that one would be allowed and the other, or rather what is currently in front of us is not, and that's the reason that I asked the question. So short of that, with that, I have no additional questions.
And public comment, so we have Autumn Thorman written public comment. And Raymond Van Epps is, okay.
I didn't know that was for public comment. I thought it was to attend the meeting. Make my comments public. I didn't realize that that's what it meant. If you want my poll.
Try shooting.
Sorry about that.
And Jessie, is anyone online?
No.
Okay.
Do we have all statements?
Right, yeah, I did print out on the statement. She asked several questions. And I think as a board, going forward, the staff is not going to read public comments into the record. There are some questions here that I would like to just read out loud to the extent that you would like to answer some of them. Why is the digital sign being placed in this space? What will the sign advertise exactly? We've gotten that answer. What are the next steps after the sign is installed? Who are the entities involved in next steps? Individuals as well as business entities. How long will the sign be in use? Who else will advertise on the sign? How will pedestrian traffic be affected by this project and its next steps?
First, there's no advertising. The church isn't, unless you call that we put our hours of worship advertising or what services we're offering, advertising. We have no intent to rent any of the sign out to anyone. We're willing, we want it strictly for the church. Conversely, we recognize that we're gonna take down a big sign and we need to be able to afford whoever leases the parking lot a place to advertise that, well, that's not a bad, to publish the rates, use hours and that stuff. But that would be the same way with slides, not rotating or anything with time limits. But yeah, what the church has no interest whatsoever in anyone advertising except public service announcements from the city or that sort of thing. None whatsoever. So there'd be no, yes, if you want to call advertising the church advertising, but no private entities will advertise on that side.
Notwithstanding the parking lot today.
Right, the bottom 1 foot, the parking, whoever leases, they'll be afforded the opportunity to present their rates so that people using it can see that. And that'll be different color than the rest of the side, but that's.
One of the other questions that I'm curious about your response, how will pedestrian traffic be affected by this project?
It won't affect pedestrian traffic whatsoever. It's inside the parking lot, which is inside a fence. All pedestrian traffic is on the sidewalks outside of exactly like it is today. Can they walk through the lot? It's not restricted. I guess they could walk through the lot, but we don't see it affecting pedestrian traffic whatsoever.
Little clearance to walk under it, yes,
So,
if they wanted to, but.
and as far as who will use it, the church will have someone, probably our office manager, who will prepare the slides. And also the church will clear whoever leases it, what they intend to put on there also. But that'll be their oversight.
I feel like a lot of the presentation was based on parking, but it appears that the primary objective of the digital sign is to publish
Right.
the events that are happening in the church.
That
Is that
is
correct?
That's 100% correct. Thank you.
I have kind of two legal questions and maybe other board members. Is it permissible if we were considering this application, is it permissible to put conditions that would, one, like restrict the type of advertisement to like no commercial advertisement notwithstanding advertisement for paid parking? And then the second question would be could we put a condition that would say you have to be in compliance with this parking lot standard ordinance?
I would say, I would definitely ask the second one. I would imagine that's kind of just required either way, because it's the law. The first one, I have to definitely look into a little more.
Well,
Yeah, I would say it's a content restriction.
Yeah.
It is for a church. That is one of the big ones.
yes,
I think advertise is not really the right word for what they wanted to show on the sign, right? What they want to display. They want to display, right, soup kitchen, all of that. I don't think they're like selling anything.
No, it's
fine,
free.
right? That's my understanding.
Hot dogs are free, soup's free, the food pantry's free, no charge.
Right, and First Church has been around since when?
380 years, little before the city of Albany.
So is it literally the first church?
It's the first Dutch church in the new country, yes.
300 and how many years?
380, well, 1642. Oh, 382 now, wow.
it proceeds the dominant charter?
I'm sorry.
It proceeds like the city charter?
Yeah, we still have the granting charter hung in the church from King George or whoever it was granting the church. It wasn't in that location. It was down a little further, burnt, rebuilt, and this one here is hopefully doesn't get burned. Unless the city would like to loan us a lot of money to rebuild it. But no, but seriously, it's back to the same thing as we have, I don't know if we have two new ministers who are younger and much more energetic and bring with them their experience with technology, which ultimately led us to go this way. So we're optimistic that.
Can I ask a question then? So, and this goes back to alternatives considered, does your church utilize social media? Because I'm thinking, for example, across the street, there's Empire Live, which has constantly shows of, multiple nights, people rotating through. They don't have a digital sign. I don't know that they even have posters outside that really advertise who's showing up. So I'm just sort of curious about.
We have a young man who is starting to bring us kicking and screaming into the media, but we have a ways to go there. But that is being thought of by the church too. Thank you.
I think that, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, Mark, that their church preceded the Albany charter by 44 years.
Now, what is the word so that you can hear what you're saying? The what charter?
The Dungan charter is this Albany's like city charter.
Right.
For the old chartered city in the country.
You guys are older by twice my life.
In other towns where we do this, we do variances for digital signs. I don't know if they would be open to this, but I would love to offer like conditions. Sometimes we call them, we'll say, like you're allowed 10 different messages a day. That's it. They can only pertain to the church. You can kind of like write that in the variance to where we have to follow those rules, and you can, cite us if we don't. But if you do grant us the variance, which I really hope you will, you could write conditions in there. So you could say like the only advertising that whatever parking company, even in the future, is able to put are the rates, the hours, and no overnight parking. They're not allowed to write anything else. And the church can only broadcast, we'll say, community events. So soup kitchens, blood drives, and then anything Albany County also would like to put on the sign if they wanted to say, voting is happening here. And then Amber Alerts, if that's okay with everybody, those automatically get pushed to the sign. We can certainly turn them off. I think that's important.
You mentioned earlier, it's a fairly smart sign that adjusts to, for example, weather conditions. One of the things we often ask about applicants with signage, particularly at night, is sort of the intensity of illumination and the impact on the community surrounding areas. Is the intention that this sign, recognizing that no overnight parking is allowed, like what are the hours that parking is allowed to, and would the sign be off after the utilization of the lot is no longer permitted because it's now overnight?
Sure. So if needed, we can black out almost the top screen. So we'll call it the churches section, and then leave no overnight parking on the very bottom. So then that's the only message you're seeing at night, and then it doesn't change from the hours of, let's say, 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. And then, let's say at 5 a.m. or 4 a.m., the bottom portion can say Monday through Friday, and then free parking or parking $4 per hour, whatever really that is. We do have capabilities to set a timer. So Monday through Friday, the sign automatically turns off and no parking is displayed. The sign is very intelligent, and you can schedule send items, it's called. So on the weekends, if you wanted the sign to be blank from 11 p.m. until 6 a.m., that's certainly a capability. I like to tell people, because before I did signs, I literally had no idea what light throws from a digital sign. MVP Arena is a terrible comparison. That's a lot bigger. But a sign anywhere between 5 foot tall by 10 foot wide on at night, a Daktronics or Watchfire, doesn't throw any more light than a traffic light. That's a really good comparison. So it's, if you go around and you see other digital signs, some of them have a white background or whatever, and they're really bright, and you're like, wow, that's a terrible sign. That's usually a different sign. It's like an Optech, a Cirrus. There's a lot of cheap displays, which a lot of people are like, oh, it's 20 grand, you know, it's a lot of money, but we'll invest in that. And then it breaks, they can't get parts, it doesn't auto dim. It's great. These are very expensive, but they're worth it. They tie into weather alerts, you can fix them. The sign will probably be good between 10 and 20 years with like no issues. They can also, if you know, if a digital sign kind of starts to get funky, if you've ever seen one and it looks really bad, the panels out, Dactronics and Watchfire can also wire directly into the sign and fix it over a computer. So it's very, very user friendly and it's easy to fix. So it doesn't, you know, it's not up there, it's super bright, it looks terrible, it's broken. It's like a very easy to fix and it's definitely an investment. But for the right reasons, you get what you pay for with a sign like this for sure.
I'd also just add for the board members, I'd be much more comfortable with what you mentioned, like that time restriction on the sign. If you want to have it off certain time, place, and manner restrictions versus any content. I think we should avoid trying to regulate that thing.
I think we'd be very happy with that. Okay, correct.
I have no problem with that. Just what I was, after what you said, I was gonna add. We do want to advertise, you know, we do different services, some on Thursdays, some on Wednesdays. I would not want to restrict that, but I understand the timing, yeah, keeping it on longer, I think that is fine too. When you say blacked out, do you mean turned off, blacked out? Is that what you're saying though? It's for sake of it, from 11 o'clock at night till 6 in the morning, no church sign can go on. Is that what you're saying?
But when you say blacked out, because you said the sign has a certain technology, what did you mean by that?
So we could do either. We could literally turn the portion of it off so it appears black, or, you know, depending on what we kind of resolve, like maybe we could put just Thursday and Sunday service with a time and then hold that there overnight. I'm not super concerned that the sign's gonna be too bright. It's nothing like MVP Arena. It's gonna be nothing crazy, so it shouldn't really bother anybody. So we could also hold something, let's say from 11 PM until 6, like hold maybe the service hours or something like that. And then at 6 AM, you know, have a couple slides go throughout the day. But we do have the capabilities of turning the sign off if needed.
And portion of the sign is off. You have the capability to do that as well. Like, sure, you mentioned the parking we stayed on, but the
Yeah,
church
we
content.
can turn the church technically off, leave it blank, or maybe hold just the service hours overnight, and then, you know, leave the bottom portion on. It's basically gonna almost look like two signs, because you kind of break up the screen.
No illumination between X or X.
Except for the parking lot, because the parking lot literally is used almost 24 hours a day. The only real restrictions we have are for Sundays, and that's the only time we tow is Sunday morning. The rest of the time, the company turns a benevolent eye, if you will, and does not go about towing. Just that the church requires the company to make sure that that lot, if you looked at the lot, you'd see how those vehicles, the outdoor pulpit that was built, oh my goodness, 28 years ago. Cars parked facing it, so you're parking across the lot. And at any service, they get 20 to 30 or more cars, plus people sitting in the park and listening to the service. So the parking sign, especially the Sunday restriction, would be an important one. Other than that, I'm sure that consistory, our governing body, would not have a problem if the requirement was that at this time, the main portion of the sign goes black, blank, whatever you want to call it, and then it can regenerate as of X. I believe they would not have any problem with that. If that was a stipulation and a restriction in use.
And I know in the past, this board has done, in addition to like the immediate temporal conditions, like kind of a greater temporal condition of like, this is allowed for 10 years. I think that was used in like a fence case or something, so that should this property be under, since variance is run with the land, should this property be no longer church that wants the message, and it could be anyone who wants the message and would have this illuminated sign 10 years.
But the church is gonna own the sign, the church owns the posts, it's the church's sign, basically. Paid for the electricity, they own the parking lot, pay the school and property taxes. I can't, I mean, I should never say never, but I can't conceive the church giving up its parking lot for during the winter time. The church parks free in the lot on Sundays to attend service and, so I never say never, but I can't conceive us ever selling a parking lot. But
Maybe if there was a change in ownership, then maybe the variance wouldn't carry over and it would have to come to you guys again for consideration. The rules changed?
It runs with the land, I believe, so, but
I think what you mentioned would be appropriate. I was reading into like conditions or variances earlier today, and I didn't see anything that would imply it wouldn't be okay. Just put like a 10 years sort of scheme with that one there. It's nothing that speaks to it that directly, but it seems like that would be what I speak.
How long has the church been at this location?
1932, I believe.
I'd like to make a motion.
but do we have an, staff recommendations regarding seeker on the board before?
Oh, yeah.
Today's your negative declaration for the access.
So this is a,
Should we do that first, or?
Then incorporate it into some other motions.
Yeah, she can help you to incorporate it into your motion if you want to, Julissa.
Sure. Love it. So I think in light, we've heard, from my perspective, the particular use, the particular owner, the particular community, sort of, involvement or consideration. While I believe that there could be other alternatives considered, I think based on certain conditions that I'll name in a second, I'm gonna move that the board consider approving this variance on the condition that the sign complies with the specific timing requirements of the portion of the code dealing with changing signs, which I think the applicant has already discussed and maintained, that the portion of the sign or of the screen that will display rotating or changing information be limited to information from the church and for the church community. That any time outside of church hours, to the extent that Jesus sleeps, the portion of the sign related to church communications is in whatever form is least intrusive, is shut off or de-illuminated to its maximum capacity. And that any other remaining portion of that digital display be limited to hours of operation relating to parking and no other information. And with that extremely wordy length of conditions. And stop, I got one more before I get to secret. And because this current display or sign or variance or conditions are in special consideration for the current tenant or owner, that this be limited to a period of 10 years from today, at which time a successor, or if it's still, I hope it's still the church, return and reapply. And finally, to issue a negative declaration for this unlisted action. And does that,
You have a second?
sorry,
Oh, sorry.
feels like a lot. Now I'm done.
Do we have a second?
So just to clarify, so after 10 years, they would have to go through this whole process again?
Yes.
Okay, so I would end the motion, maybe make it. Any thoughts on 15 years, or I'm just thinking that this church has been in this location since 1932. And they've been in existence for 382 years.
So how about 15 years? Or the property being transferred over to another owner, whichever one happens first. In which case, if the church continues to maintain the property for 15 years, it'll be the 15 years. Fair, sorry, I cut you off,
No,
but I think that's a solid point.
that's where I was going, but with that.
Mr. Ray's not going in.
With that ended, I would second motion.
Okay, we got a second. And this is the motion for the negative declaration as well as granting the area variance with the conditions as stated by Lisa. Paige, how do you vote?
Abstain.
Lisa, how do you vote?
Yes.
Serena, how do you vote?
Yes.
Martha, yes. The motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wow.
Sorry.
Thank you, Sharon.
Dismiss.
Thank you, though, I think that's very fair. Thank you very much.
Appreciate your time and your consideration.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Does the board have any other business?
Do we have minutes?
Sustained first.
Oh.
But the first document. So, sir, we did vote to table the application.
Okay.
I don't know what the method is procedurally.
I think you could appropriately make a motion to hear it now, if that's what you all wanted to do. However, in the interest of the reason you tabled it, I think that might also be appropriate for like the next meeting, Tyler, to do that, so.
I know
Well, I voted no on the table, so you probably don't want my opinion.
we had the board had very, not lengthy, but we had, a long list of action items, follow-up items. Are you prepared to speak to us about those items?
Honestly, excuse me, I am not, I was sick and then, I was also on vacation before then, so I'm not even caught up to speed on it. I just didn't want to miss the meeting.
Appreciate your effort.
So, I know, it's hard, so I just didn't want to miss it and make sure we were all up to speed and make sure you guys were getting everything you needed or
Yep.
so.
So full transparency, we did vote to table the application for tonight. So for all intents and purposes, you are not harmed. So I'd appreciate you coming here, and then if continue to work with planning staff regarding the follow-up items, and we look forward to seeing your application
Okay,
at a future meeting.
all right, thank you very much.
Yes.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Feel better.
Thank you, I feel much better.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do we have minutes?
I don't think so, either Erica or I were at the July meeting. Doubt they were prepared.
We don't.
To be honest.
We'll have minutes next time.
Oh, yeah, that's.
And I know I did not read Erica's email, I'm just.
I did.
In the record, but. Yeah. So.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. And our fearless leader, Adriana, our chair, I think is back next meeting.
Back September or October?
No, I think October, she's going to France.
Okay.
Yeah, so October, maybe she's out there for a month, so.
That's nice.
I know.
It's too bad not during the Olympics, but.
Yeah.
Uh,
Motion to adjourn.
Were you
Yeah.
gonna say something?
no, I was gonna say no to adjourn.
Second.
Yeah.
Paige, how do you vote? Yes.
Yes.
Please.
Yes.
Martha, yes.
So, good page?
Yes,
And there were like multiple seconds, you put like 3 of us, so.
Forget that. Yeah. All right. I'll be adjourned.